Hello everyone, Needs More Drums here, and today I'm going to share with you my strategy for starting a new city in Cities Skylines 2. Whether you are using normal mode or the new easy mode, I recommend playing with money enabled because it helps you develop your city in a realistic way. Investments in city services and infrastructure will shape your city's layout and history, and balancing the budget keeps you aware of your city's needs. In this video, I'll be sharing my approach to setting up infrastructure, creating a city layout, and managing the budget to help you achieve a profit within the first few milestones. Let's get started. All right, welcome back to Cities Skylines 2 in our soon-to-be city of Beginnersburg on the Peaks Bay map, which can be found on Paradox Mods. And this map seems like a pretty decent city to start, or a pretty decent map to start a new city if you're pretty new to the game for a couple of reasons. One being that it has all of the outside connections that we need, including power and water, which will come in handy a little bit later on. And two, there's a lot of flat buildable area. We don't have to deal with any crazy terrain, but we still have the option to kind of work around these hills and work around this coastline, if we so choose. So we can have a little nice variety in the style of our city. And let's just go ahead and jump into kind of some of the things that I think about when I first open up a map before I even place down a single road. So the first thing we really want to pay attention to is wind direction, and that's important for a couple of reasons. One, it determines where we're going to put our industry, and two, it determines if wind power can be a viable power source for us. So the first thing that I mentioned is industry, and that this might be a little bit of a hot take. I feel like not everybody thinks about this when they start their city, but I like to think about where my industry is going to go before you even think about putting down roads or houses or anything like that. Because if you look at cities in real life, they're often built around industry. And, you look at any city like Chicago or where I'm from, or like, even New York or anything like that, they're all usually built around these big port cities where there was a lot of trade, going on back in the day. And now they've kind of grown from those industrial centers, and those old industrial centers have been replaced by, newer waterfront developments. But the history still stands, right? So when we're starting a city, if we choose to grow the city organically, which is the way that I like to play. I like to start from a central point and kind of let the city grow naturally. Kind of takes me back to the SimCity 4 days, where you just kind of start in a little spot and just kind of keep zoning and replacing your zones with higher density. That's kind of the way that I like to play Cities Skylines too. And so I like to think about where my industry is going to go. You can see here that we have, some water over here. We can think about maybe setting up some kind of port along this water, this coast in the near future. And it's good too because our wind direction is going towards the water. So we want to set up our industry on this side of the map. We don't want to set it up over here because all that's going to happen is the wind is going to carry the pollution, whichever direction it's blowing. So primarily, we don't have a ton of like coastal space here right at this very moment, but what we do have is this nice highway connection. So I would think that we're going to put our industry kind of in this little corner here to start, and then as we purchase tiles and expand the city, we can eventually bring it out into the coast over here. And so another reason that I want to put the industry probably over here is because we have this big groundwater reservoir here, and I don't want to pollute that. So I don't want to really put the industry over here, because if we expand this way, we risk polluting that groundwater reservoir. And same thing, like I said, like just over here generally we want to keep it away from this to avoid having the wind blow it over wherever gonna put houses over here or something like that. So I want to try to keep the industry over here. You can see the wind direction is going this way just a little bit, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem as long as we keep our industry pretty close to the coast. And so with that in mind, I now want to think about some of my critical infrastructure. So the first thing that I want to think about is power, and we have like three options when it comes to power. So we have wind power, we have coal power, or our third option is to just connect directly to this power line and import electricity and just build a substation. Typically, I kind of go between the two. I don't really know if one is better than the other. It kind of depends on how much of an initial investment you want to make in your power. So there is definitely kind of an economies of scale thing working in the background where, if you import electricity early on, it might save you some money because you're not dumping $100,000 into a coal power plant right at the start. But over time, that import cost is definitely going to exceed having built your own power plant. And keep in mind, you can also export power too, so having that nice little buffer, if you have a nice surplus, can generate some additional money and kind of offset the cost of running that power upkeep. So for the purposes of this map, I think we're gonna go with some wind power because we have a very, very strong wind current. And I guess before I even place this down, one thing that I really want to emphasize is, you know, I want to show you guys how to start a city with a budget. I want to show you how to manage the budget. I work in finance in real life, and so I, you know, deal with income and expenses all the time, right? And it just, for me, managing the budget in your city just makes it that much more engaging. I like kind of, you know, managing the city services and just, you know, seeing how, you know, which investments I'm going to make. Speaking of income and expenses, we want to pay attention to our upkeep costs. So if we look at our wind turbines versus our coal power plant, for example, we can see that, you know, we would need to put down, these are $25,000 a piece, and this is $100,000. So we don't really need to build something that is going to give us 20 megawatts of power right from the start. Instead, we can build, you know, 1 or 2 of these and spend half the money. And our upkeep cost, the upkeep cost for these is a little bit cheaper than a maxed out coal power plant. So you can see our upkeep is 5,000 to 45,000. And so you figure 4 of these would not be $45,000, right? It'll be closer to $30,000. So even if we built 4 of these, we would produce the same power and have less of an upkeep cost. And also these can be upgraded. I don't really think that this could be upgraded. And these don't pollute, so like, why would we not, right? This is kind of a great win-win situation here. And so, you know, I think I would want to put these probably over here, kind of on this hillside, anywhere where we can get 5 megawatts of power. And again, like, I'm not too concerned, you know, just for the purposes of this video. Obviously, feel free to put something like this wherever you want, but I kind of like the thought of having these kind of back here. And since we'll have our industrial zone here, it'll be a nice buffer, you know, between any houses over here or anything like that. So let's go ahead and just, we'll place down like one of these for now. And of course, we'll, you know, come back to that. And one thing that I like to do too is kind of drag out a little road to this. So we could do something like just, you know, coming off of this, little highway here. So the only thing with having wind power though, is we have to make sure, I mean, we can connect a low voltage line directly to this, which definitely is the cheaper option. And you know what? It might be the one that we go for the purposes of this video. Alternatively, we can have a transformer station, which, you know, we can connect up a medium voltage line to, but we'll do that a little bit further down the road, since that's going to be costing us a pretty penny, and we don't really want to be spending money that we don't need to be spending, you know, early on. So we'll just, you know, do something very, very basic like this. And you can see that all roads do have power and water built under them, except for highways. So highways do not have power or water. So you will have to run external power lines and sewer lines and water mains. But, you know, this is just a 3-lane one-way road. So we do have power and water underneath. Now that we have our power established, I want to think about water. And so for water, we have 2 options. Our first option is ground. Well, actually, we have 3 options. Actually, we have 4 options. So our first option is obviously to import water, which we have these outside connections here. Not all maps, I don't think really any maps in the base game have this option, but a lot of modded maps do. This one in particular, you know, you can see we have this outside connection here, so we can import water from the start, which is an option, right? But I prefer to get our water internally in our starting tile. So we have a couple of ways that we can do this. One, we can put down a water pumping station directly on the coast and get water that way. 2, we can use our groundwater reservoir here and get water via the reservoir with a groundwater pumping station. Or 3, we can use a water tower, which is a little bit more expensive. I don't use a lot of water towers, especially if we have, you know, other sources of water that are going to be a little bit cheaper. These cost a little bit more to maintain because, you know, they don't actually have, they like are their own water source. They're not taking water from groundwater deposit or anything like that. But, you know, definitely a cool thing to put in your city if you're looking, especially for aesthetic. I know this one has some funny upgrades. This is one of the region packs, but the water pumping station is by far the cheapest, just so you know. So this will have, for $25,000, you get a water output of 100,000 cubic meters per month, versus a groundwater pumping station is, you know, almost double the cost. It's $40,000. It has double the upkeep cost, and you only get 75,000 cubic meters of a maximum water output. So I do prefer to place this down, and I'm gonna place it down way over here, and I'm gonna explain why in just a second. But I think this should be just fine, so we're gonna place that down. And so the reason that I put that upstream, you can see our arrows here are pointing this way to the left of the screen, which means that the water is flowing that way. I want to think about where I'm going to put my sewage outlet. So it is unfortunate when you start your city, you don't get a way to treat wastewater other than just dumping it into like a lake or an ocean or a river. So, you know, not the most realistic, but it's just what we kind of have to work with. So so I just got to place this down right there. And these don't need a road connection, which is nice, or a power connection. So we can just drag, you know, our sewer pipe wherever once we start getting our roads built. But this one does need a road connection. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just do something very simple for now. And we'll connect up to that a little bit later. But these don't need power. They'll just run on their own. So now we can actually start thinking about roads and zoning. So for this city, it's looking like we have a nice flat area to build, which is really favorable when you're just starting your city for the first time. And one thing that we're gonna so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna think about where industry is gonna go. And the reason that I want to put it here too is because we are very close to the highway, so trucks can just go right into this roundabout and just get right into the industry here. They don't have to drive through the whole city wherever our city is going to be. So this is a great option for us. And you know, one thing that I actually like to do with you know, when they give you like these nice little connections like this, I kind of like to make a cool little centerpiece in a way, right? So we can make something interesting with this, and usually I like to do something like kind of like a little I'll call it like a square about, you know, kind of like a little town square or something like that. And this could be cool too, because we can actually use the perpendicular alleyways that we have available to us. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a connection here with just a regular road, and then I'm going to convert it to, so the reason that this connection exists, this is going to go to our industrial area over here, and then this one will kind of follow, we'll have it follow this kind of this hillside. It'll be like a nice, you know, scenic drive. We'll have some suburbs up here, but presumably in the future. But you know, I'm just thinking about the future and kind of where I want things to go, right? And you can see we're hemorrhaging money, but don't worry, we're gonna get past that. And so now I want to convert this to a 2-lane one-way, which we don't really need the big you know, 3 lanes. And I'm still going to keep this interesting little center gap here because I want to do something kind of interesting with this. But now we can make over here, we can make like a little town square, right? So we could do something kind of cool. We could maybe use some of these angled parking roads. I really like these. I think that they are a great addition to the game. And you know, I think this could be a cool little city center for us. You know, we can have some commercial zones here. You know, in the future. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and replace this real quick with one of these because, yeah, I just think that looks a little bit better. But yeah, we can have some commercial zones here, and I don't know why that is deciding to not zone in. There we go. Maybe. There we go. Nice. Perfect. So now we have this nice even grid in the middle, and we can, you know, zone some commercial zones eventually if we get like some mixed use, or we can even put like a nice little park here or something, right? But yeah, so now that we have that built, we can go ahead and drag out some more roads. And so one thing that you want to be conscious of is building too much too quickly. And so when I start my city, typically I don't really build a lot of 4-lane roads. I might have, you know, a couple if we're looking to, you know, if I'm really sure that I'm gonna have a main road somewhere. But right now, you know, I don't really see a place where I'm going to have, I mean, I figure that this is going to be a main road, but I kind of want to do something a little bit more interesting, I think, for now. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to continue this road for just a little bit longer, and then I'll have it kind of convert into a 4-lane road. And so to do that, I'm just going to drag out a normal road here for a minute. And I'm going to tie this one kind of back into here. Yeah, then it can do something like that, right? So now we have this nice, cool little centerpiece that we could do some decorative things with. You know, we could maybe put some trees in here or something cool, kind of like what's already in the map, and we have a nice little town square for us. And now we'll have this main road here. We can just drag this out. I'm not going to do too much with this yet. You know, again, I want to be careful about building too much too fast. It's very easy to get carried away and to just start going crazy with the roads and just build, you know, this crazy grid and everything without having anything to put in it. So yeah. So now that we have kind of these initial roads laid out, I want to think about where my certain types of zones are going to go, right? So we don't obviously want to zone residential directly next to our industry. So we always kind of want like a little bit of a buffer. And usually when I start my cities, I intentionally leave kind of like a blank space and then work on filling that in a bit later. Typically, I find that, you know, putting like some kind of city service or, you know, commercial or some kind of different type of destination, you know, between your residential and your industry really helps create that kind of bridge that gap. And so, you know, right now I'm going to leave, I'm thinking that I'm going to put some residential kind of over here and, you know, kind of by the town square and the industry over here. So I'm going to leave like this spot blank for now. And I'll come back to that later once we have a better idea of, you know, kind of how everything's looking and what we might want to put there. But yeah, I think for now, you know, we can actually go ahead and just drag out a little bit of a grid. So you notice that I have these right 3 road tools, these snapping tools off, because this is going to allow us to create a perfect right angle grid based on our existing road connections here. So I like to go, you know, maybe like 2 to 4 tiles, depending on the sides of the grid that I want. For this, we'll keep it kind of small. We'll just go, I believe this is going to be a 8 by 8, or is it 10 by 10? 8 by 8. Yeah. So we got an 8 by 8 grid here, and we can just drag this out. And even better, that connects it up perfectly with our main road connection here. So we could have this as an additional connection. And so, of course, one thing that we want to be conscious of is just how many connections we're going to have, right? So we want to limit the connections to our main road. And if you want to learn a little bit more about this, check out my video on road hierarchy. But that's one thing that I try to do is limit the connections to the main road. So we just have, you know, we don't have, you know, a ton of interruptions and traffic can flow accordingly. So like for this, for example, I'm not going to have any sort of connection to this right here. I'm going to leave this as is, and we're just going to drag out, you know, this road like so. If I can get the grid to look good, there we go. That's better. And then right here, you know, we have this awkward space. Presumably we're going to turn this into some kind of park or something. You know, I'm trying to think about those things as I expand my grid, right? And usually like I'll think about where I'm going to put schools and everything like that. So if I, you know, say drag out this grid here, maybe I'll put a connection there, but then I'll leave this blank and put like a school here, or, you know, leave like an area like this blank and put like a bigger high school or something here, right? So we want to think about where those city service buildings are going to go and kind of intentionally leave spaces for those. And now, since we don't want to have all of our traffic just on this one-way road here, I'm going to give people an additional connection right here. And like I said, maybe there's going to be a school here. This is going to be kind of, probably will turn into another little main road for us, since it'll funnel traffic from our industry connection to the other side of the city. So we're going to leave it at that. We'll have a nice little residential neighborhood here. Maybe we'll have our school. Maybe we'll have a little bit of a commercial zone here or something like that. Some little shops. You know, just thinking about where we want to place some of those major destinations, right? Kind of those important spots in the city. All right, so now you can see I've got a little grid here just kind of laid out. So now I want to think about my industry zone. So for industry, I'd like to do kind of a mixture of roads and alleyways. And for these, we're going to go for much bigger lots, because I think that having those big factories, you know, look really realistic. And so we're going to have a nice mix of zone sizes. We're going to have some big factories. We're going to have some smaller, you know, warehouses and things. We don't want to zone all big factories, but what I'd like to do is kind of something like this, right? We'll zone out the grid here, and then we'll kind of split it up into some smaller lots using our alleyways like so. So here we can have some bigger factories and things, and then we can have, you know, some smaller warehouses kind of over here. I also like to leave some space for empty lots. I think adding in empty lots make your industry look really, really good. And you can also, you know, add in some parking lots, leave some space for parking lots and stuff in the future too. So one thing that I'm not going to do though, is I'm not going to connect my industry to this main road here. I'm not going to do any zoning on this road for industry. I'm going to keep it all over here because I don't want trucks turning onto my main road and interrupting all my traffic flow. So just something to consider. So now that we've got this kind of laid out, I think it's time to get to zoning. So like I said, I actually want to start my industry. It's going to zone some of this out, just fill in some of these areas here. And we'll leave this lot blank. We'll leave like a little blank spot here that we can fill in later. Just some variety. You know, I want to think about my my residential zones. So we're going to go, and I think we're actually going to use the US Southwest pack in conjunction with kind of the Northeast pack. You know, I'm from the States. I like to build with these assets. I think they look really good and kind of know what I'm getting myself into. Since this is going to be, you know, more of a North American city after all, we can plan as such. So in terms of zoning out my residential, I like to do something like this and zone out these lots individually and then kind of fill in the gaps. This helps create a really uniform look. And I promise it doesn't take that much longer than just, you know, filling in the zones. And honestly, this outweighs the extra little bit of time that it takes, because I think this just makes your city look so much better and so much more, you know, clean and planned out and organized. We're just going to fill this in real quick. And then, like I said, in terms of commercial, I don't have the zones that I want to put here yet. I want to save this for like some, well, actually we might have, I think some of these actually look the part, the Northeast pack. So maybe we'll do something like this. Right, so that's kind of how our zones are going to look for right now. So now I'm just going to go ahead and press play. We're going to lose a ton of money and then hopefully get to milestone 1 and we can start talking about the budget. Right, and as you may have guessed, I forgot to connect up water and our sewer lines. So let's do that because that is very, very important. So we do need a water connection to our, or a road connection to our water pump. So what I'm going to do is drag this road all the way down here. I know this is a little bit excessive, but I figured that we're going to develop on this in the future anyway. And just for now, I'm going to make a very, very temporary connection here. Very temporary. So we'll leave that there for now. And now that should solve our water issue. And this guy actually does need power. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I misspoke. So you should be getting some power soon. I had the game on pause. That's why I wasn't getting any power. So there we go. Fix that. So now we have our water and our sewer connected. And for the sewer, I just dragged a pipe just, you know, under there real quick for, you know, for ease. But yeah, so you can still see we have a little bit of a commercial demand here. Our commercial zones are still coming in. And we could actually zone out a few more of these here. So if we just, you know, kind of follow the same logic here. Like I said, this is going to be probably a main road for us here. So I think we can zone out a little bit more commercial here. Then I'll save this for, you know, like a city service, but we can zone out a little bit commercial here too. Now we should have a nice balance of zones. You can see our population is increasing and our money it's going away, but it's not horrible. Could be worse from the start. So now we're starting to peak up a little bit in terms of our residential demand. So I think it makes sense to zone some more houses. And to do that, I'm just going to fill in these gaps here. All right, and so you can see we've reached milestone 1 now. So we got a little bit of cash. We got a progression or a development point, and we have the ability to buy some tiles with expansion permits. And so look at our progression panel here. We also got a signature building, which is nice. But yeah, so we got a few different things here, actually quite a few. We got row housing. We got, well, the equivalent of row housing for some of the region packs. We have some specialized industries, some new roads, healthcare, and garbage management. And most importantly, we can actually manage the budget now with taxation and service budgets and everything like that. So you can see I expanded out the city just a little bit to kind of keep up with the demand and, you know, just keep things moving along. And so we want to take a look at the service budget. So one important thing to note is that your source of income is taxes. That's pretty much it. Service fees, yeah, a little bit, but not really. Your main source of income is going to be your taxes. So typically what I like to do is bump up commercial and industry, at least when you're starting, bump up commercial and industry to about 11%. And you're going to see your demand is going to take a bit of a hit. You just saw, if you notice that, it just went down a little bit. So see if I bring industry back down, demand is going to bump up a little bit, but it doesn't make it go away. If you raise your taxes too much, you can actually make your industry demand completely go away. And same with commercial or residential or anything like that. I don't like to tax residential too much because otherwise your demand is going to struggle a little bit. I usually bring these down actually a little bit, which makes people happier. You get a little bump here that says like fair taxes. See, it says +1. If I bring this down to like 6%, you'll get like +2. So it'll just increase citizen happiness. And honestly, like the additional tax income early on that you're going to get, you know, is not really going to matter that much from residential zones. I feel much better taxing my businesses, which, you know, is whatever, but we do need that income, right? And your industrial zones are going to be a huge driving force of that. I mean, there's always a big demand for industry. People are always going to want jobs. And it seems like since some of the new economy updates, the commercial demand is getting pretty significant as well. And it seems to be, you know, even now, like usually I would zone 2 commercial buildings and demand would go away. Now I have a good amount. And so for services, you know, we don't really need all of this budget for services. So especially with water, I mean, water, we have, you know, we're making all of this production, and I currently don't have an outside connection, so I'm not exporting any of it. Same with power. Power, though, we only have the one wind turbine, which we actually could lower it though. Look, we're only using about what would that be, like 40% of this? So we're using about 2 megawatts out of 5. So theoretically, we could bring our service budget for electricity down a little bit. We can bring it down, let's say about 80 for now. Water and sewage, we can bring it down a whole lot. We can bring this like down to halfway. And already you're going to see that our monthly balance, our monthly deficit for that matter, has been significantly reduced. And you know, this is just a matter of keeping an eye on this, just popping in every once in a while. And you can see we're still just so, look at this, 24,000 output, and we're only using like 850 a month, right? So this is my point, right? You want to be mindful of your budget and realize that you can adjust it, you know, and you just have to keep an eye on it, actively manage it over time. It's really not that hard. Just every once in a while you pop in, you know, you pop into your demand or your production of these, you know, water or power, and then you jump in and just adjust the budget accordingly. And you know, your people will tell you, you'll start getting little blackouts, the little power symbols. You'll start getting the no water, or, you know, water system overloaded or something. You know, your city will let you know, your citizens will let you know. So, you know, pay attention to them, don't ignore them. And then finally, you know, the last thing that I'll say is with city services, once you unlock these city services, technically you need them. Your citizens will require them to be happy. And, you know, city services are really expensive, especially things like garbage management. And honestly, a landfill is a super cheap option, but it's not super sustainable. You really want to try to get something like a recycling center kind of as soon as you can, because this is going to be a long-term solution that has a way higher processing capacity for your garbage. You can see it has 1,500 tons a month in processing capacity. And that's what's going to keep your city moving. The landfill, it just kind of piles up, you know, as the name would suggest, right? It doesn't really do anything to process the garbage. So it just kind of sits there. You need to invest in some kind of production facility pretty early on if you can, which is expensive. Again, look at $880,000 for a recycling center. And same thing with medical. You know, medical, we have clinics that we need to get down pretty early on, or people will start getting sick. People are going to start dying. I like to hold off on death care as long as possible because, you know, we don't need it right away. As you can see, people are fine right now. But once you start getting those death notifications, honestly, the first progression point that I like to spend is on crematorium, because the crematorium is just such a better option, because the cemetery is just massive and it's expensive. And I mean, so is a crematorium. It's also very expensive. But in terms of like a long-term solution for your city, it's a little bit better, I think. Alternatively, if you have the UK region pack, you can use this church, which is a great early death care facility. You have 100 storage capacity, is only $40,000, only $40,000. And it costs a fraction of the upkeep compared to, it's like half the upkeep of the crematorium. And it's what, a sixth of the cost? Like, It's almost a no-brainer, and it looks good. You know, there's cities are built around churches, and so this is a really, really nice addition to your city to have a nice little church, and you get the benefit of the death care, which I think is a great solution. So let's just go ahead and just expand the city a little bit more, and we're going to try to turn a profit. And you can already see, just by managing our budget for water and power, we've already reduced our deficit to practically, well, there you go, right there. We're already making some money, and we're in milestone 1. And of course, this is going to go away when we get healthcare. This is going to go away when we get garbage. But again, the key thing to remember, your source of income are your taxes. So the more you just have to keep zoning and growing the city, and then you'll create a surplus. Those people will need services. They will have demands. You invest in those services, and then to offset those costs of the services like garbage and healthcare, bring more people into your city, attract more businesses, you know, zone more industry, zone more commercial if there's demand for it. There's always going to be demand for something, unless your taxes are extremely high, which I would recommend, again, not raising your taxes too high. Don't go higher than about 11% for anything, especially residential. Try to keep your residential as low as possible. Usually when I get far along in my cities, like milestone 5 or 6, or start to have a pretty steady income, I drop this to about 5 or 6%. And people love it and they're happy, and I make enough money from commercial and industrial. I'll drop these down to about 9 or 10. And, you know, again, everyone's happy. I have strong demand for everything. And, you know, that's when you can start looking at things like, you know, higher education and, you know, bigger city services like hospitals and things like that, right? So for now, we're in milestone 1. Let's just expand the city a little bit, flush out some of these zones, expand this grid a little bit, and, you know, make something that looks relatively decent. And then we'll just jump in at the end, see how we're doing on our budget, and do a little recap. And yeah, guys, so we expanded the city a little bit. We added another wind turbine here for some additional power. But you could see things are looking pretty good, and we're only in milestone 2. And so just this attentiveness towards the budget and kind of adjusting things, you know, to fit the capacity of the city just really helps eliminate unnecessary expenses. And we're actually making a hefty profit. And even though we don't have any garbage facility right now, we can definitely afford one. You know, if we wanted to put down this landfill, it's going to be no problem at all. And the thing about city services is you really don't need to place them down until people start asking for it. So I know that we don't have, you know, these people are complaining right now about unreliable healthcare coverage, but until we get an ambulance icon, I'm not going to put down a clinic. And so that way, you know, you kind of postpone the impact, the negative impact, and you know, those expenses, I guess not negative impact, but the negative impact to your budget. As you know, from those city services, you can postpone that as long as possible, but just waiting to put them down. I didn't put down this little UK parish church until I had about 3 hearse icons popping up saying that people, you know, were dead and needed to be taken to a cemetery. So I delayed that as long as possible. And you could do that with clinics. You could do it with, you know, you could do it with garbage, right? Once we get a garbage icon, that'll plop down a landfill. It is really just that simple. The only thing that I would not suggest doing that for is fire. Fire, when you unlock it, you want to get it down because fire can spread very, very quickly. And if there's not a fire station in your town, then when your first fire breaks out, then it'll dispatch a truck from another like neighboring city, and it's gonna have to drive all the way to your city to be able to put that fire out. So as soon as you unlock that, that's the only caveat. Well, I would say put that down as soon as you can. And actually the same goes for education. We did just unlock education, and we have the room in our budget, so like might as well put down a school now. It definitely makes sense to do that. And you don't need a high school right away, but you do want to get an elementary school down as soon as possible, because then people can start you know, getting educated. They could get better jobs, higher educated jobs, you know, pay more, people's wealth increases, and then in turn they are able to pay higher taxes. So it's kind of a, you know, a rippling effect, right? If you want to get education, get people educated early on, then it's just going to benefit the wealth of your city. There's going to be higher paying jobs available, and the buildings will all level up, which means increased tax income, like I just said. So all, you know, very, very important to get that going. So, you know, that's, again, which is why I've kind of left some of these spaces here for schools, because, you know, or for city services generally, because, you know, schools are bigger buildings. Even, you know, you look at something like, for example, the Southwest one. I mean, I could barely even just fit this, and this has extensions on it too. So I could barely fit this here. I would almost want like a bigger area like this, you know, kind of I left for kind of something like this. So, you know, it's really helpful. For example, if I want to put this thing down like right here, you know, now I have this nice big building, and some of the upgrades take place in the building, but I think this one actually does not. So yeah, you can see that now we have, you know, this upgrade that I could put somewhere else. And actually what I might do is do a little bit of we have this entryway in the back that I can connect to for the parking lot there, and just drag that alley out. Now we have another alternative route to get in and out of the school. I like that a lot. I think that's gonna look really, really nice. We can add, you know, a little playground or something here, some little basketball courts and such. You can see our budget is quickly, you know, our deficit is gonna start to pop up again here. There we go. But again, we have strong demand for residential. So all that we need to do is just zone some more houses, and more people will move in. We'll pay more taxes, and we'll get that income right back, because $2,000 is not much. And even if it gets to like 10,000, that's not a huge deficit. It really starts to become problematic when you start getting into like the 10, you know, above 50,000 deficit early on. It's really hard to recover, and especially if you have like 100,000. But we're not going to get there. We're going to zone, and we're going to manage our budget, and we're going to increase, you know, our we're going to manage our service upkeep costs and everything like that. And, you know, just keep things where they need to be. So with that being said, I think this is a great spot to kind of call it a wrap for this video. You can see that, oh, we just had a building level up there. People are moving in. And although we don't have a positive income right now, we can see that it is so doable just by adding a few more zones. Already it's decreased to, you know, the you know, positive and negative kind of fluctuates a little bit, you know, constantly, but you can see we're not too far from reaching an equilibrium here. So pretty good for all things considered, and only milestone 2. And so there we go, guys. There is a nice little city to help you guys get started thinking about some of the things that I like to consider when I am planning my city. So hopefully this helps. If I did anything, you know, differently than what you would do, leave a comment. I'd love to hear it. If this was helpful, I'd love to hear that too. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.